In the world of beloved animated stories, some characters are so surprising that they stick with us forever.
This is a call from the ancestors.
But did you know that many of them were completely different from their original designs before making it to the movies?
He's much more impressive than the hedgehog I fought previously.
Dude, I'm standing right here.
Mr. Wolf from The Bad Guys was a far cry from the version we see in the movie. He was still going to wear a suit, but his face lacked the wide snout featured in the film. Instead, he had a flatter face with his nose closer to his eyes. His design included more fur and a smaller mouth, but it didn't really resemble a wolf, so the production team decided to scrap that idea. What do you think of this original version? It's a huge departure from what we got in the movie, but one thing that hasn't changed is what you need to do to enjoy this video. Get ready, grab your popcorn, because another Cinewave episode is about to begin. One character who definitely went through major changes is Maui. In the Art of Moana book, we see that the original concept for the character featured tattoos only on his arms and back. His hair was shorter, and his body was less round, with more defined muscles. However, he didn't seem to smile much and always had a stern expression, as if he was in a bad mood. In the movie version, the demigod sports way more tattoos and a full head of thick hair. On top of that, his face is much rounder and his neck is less pronounced. Relax, Maui, you're still gorgeous either way, but we have to admit, this original version feels a little too serious for the best demigod of all time. Moana was going to look very different, maybe even more so than Maui. In the movie, she resembles a teenager transitioning into adulthood, as she's supposed to be 16 years old in the first film. But in the Art of Moana book, you can see that her original design portrayed her as a young girl with straighter hair, a shorter stature, and a slimmer build. Her face was almost entirely different, practically a whole new person. Would you even recognize her? The original concept for the world's fastest hedgehog was also quite different. He still had the general shape we know today, but his quills were less spiky and his face was softer and rounder. Not to mention, Sonic was designed to be shorter than the version we're familiar with now. All of Riley's emotions had very different designs compared to what we saw in the movie. Starting with Joy, she originally didn't have a well-defined physical body, but looked more like a form of energy. Her color was greener, which eventually became her dress. While the concept for her blue hair was already there, her body was surrounded by an energy aura. Also, her eyes were black instead of blue, as they are in the film. Sadness was going to look quite different from how we know her now. She would still be blue, but in a lighter shade and with a rounder shape than in the movie. Additionally, she was designed to wear a white striped pajama set and a sleeping cap. Honestly, the cap was kind of cute, wasn't it? Oh, and she didn't have glasses. The idea of pajamas could have made an appearance in the scene where the puberty alarm goes off in the second movie, but instead, the production team opted to give Sadness a bathrobe. Anger underwent the least amount of changes. In the movie, he's short with a flat head that bursts into flames, and that stayed consistent. However, in the original design, he was still red, but a bit slimmer and had a large eyebrow. Instead of the dress shirt, pants, and tie he wears in the film, the early concept had him in a simple white jumpsuit. Fun fact, Anger's outfit in the movie is inspired by the main character from the 1993 film Falling Down. And what about you? Would your style change based on your mood? Drop a comment with #style so we can find out. Fear was going to look very different. In the movie, he wears a vest and a bow tie, has a skinny and hunched over build, and sports a single strand of hair on his head. But in the original concept, while the idea of the single hair strand was already there, the rest of his body wasn't. He wouldn't have had clothes at all. Instead, his form resembled a smoky wisp with 2 eyes. Disgust had the most variations by far. In the movie, she wears a green dress and a pink scarf. However, in the early designs, she went through several different hairstyles and outfits. It's safe to say she was probably the hardest character to finalize. Of course, Queen Elsa needed to have an alternate version. After all, careful planning was essential to making her such a beloved character. Take a look at how different she could have been. In some versions, the Snow Queen wasn't even blonde. Her hair wasn't long, and she wore a crystal crown. All these ideas were scrapped as they made her look more like a villain. We know we're not supposed to talk about Bruno, but it's worth mentioning that his original design was completely different from the version we see in Encanto. In the movie, Bruno is a frail-looking man with dark, heavy eye bags, thin arms, and messy hair. But did you know he was originally going to be tall and have a prominent belly? Take a look at the early concept. Bruno still wore a green poncho, but underneath it, he would have been dressed in pajamas. He was envisioned as a larger man with a receding hairline and a scruffy beard. It really fits the idea of someone who's been ostracized by their family, doesn't it? In 1995, the idea of making a Shrek movie was already in development, but the design for the world's most beloved ogre was going to be very different. It's hard to imagine Shrek being uglier than he is now, but believe it or not, he was. In the original concept, he was going to be a slimmer ogre with wider arms and fewer teeth in his mouth, really looking more like a monster. However, the film's production team decided against this design because even though the movie was intended to poke fun at fairy tales, the character still needed to be fun and appealing to children, and an overly ugly ogre just wouldn't work. One of Pixar's coolest animations is Toy Story, and the main characters were going to look very different. Woody was originally envisioned as a puppet, while Buzz Lightyear would have worn a red armor and had a more prominent chin. Mr. Potato Head would have had a nose like Pinocchio's, and Andy was designed to wear glasses. Definitely quite different from what we ended up seeing, right? The idea behind making Woody a puppet was that Andy would speak through him and he would be the toy that understood the boy the most. However, this storyline was eventually scrapped, leaving us with Woody as just a regular toy. You've definitely seen ScoobyDoo, but you've probably never seen the character's early sketches before the show aired on TV. If you take a closer look, you'll notice that characters like Velma and Daphne were quite different. In Daphne's case, her hair was shorter and Velma's glasses were much larger and round, instead of the square ones we know. Even Scooby himself looked different. His face was more fearful and his nose was thinner compared to the version we see in the show. You know the one mystery that Scooby and the gang can't solve? Why you haven't subscribed to the channel and turned on the notification bell yet? You can't say that Wade can't change shape, because in Elemental, that's something he does all the time, but the original idea was for him to have a more squared chin and a bigger head. In the movie, his head is rounder and his body is a little smaller. There are some deleted scenes that leaked online showing some of the features he was originally going to have. Take a look. This next character actually started one way in the animation, but changed as the series progressed into new seasons. Pikachu originally had a much rounder body with a smaller frame, almost like he didn't even have a neck. In today's version, the electric rodent has a smaller head and a more defined body, with more prominent arms and legs. The original idea was to make him look more like a rat, but modern times transformed the character into what we know now. Did you know that Princess Ariel was almost blonde and that her tail would have been orange? However, the film's production team decided against this idea because the two previous Disney princesses, Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty, were blonde and they felt it was time for a change. Additionally, the green tail and red hair were considered to complement the ocean better, according to the studio. In the original design, Tinkerbell was actually supposed to be a redhead. The Disney fairy was envisioned with red hair and a black dress with pom-poms on the skirt. However, this idea was discarded because, according to Disney, she looked too mature for the character's purpose. Cruella de Vil was originally designed to be younger, with long straight hair. However, from the very beginning, she was envisioned as a pale woman wearing fur coats in black, white, and red. Have you seen the video showing the early ideas for the characters in Monsters, Inc.? Mike Wazowski originally didn't even have arms and was meant to be a much scarier version than what we saw in the movie. As for Sully, he was initially going to be brown, resembling a grizzly bear, and have horns. Boo, on the other hand, was originally designed to be a slightly older girl with red hair. However, they decided to make her a younger, cuter character instead. In WreckIt Ralph, the main character was originally designed with lighter, neater hair and a rounder, kinder face. However, this was changed to give him a more rugged appearance. He also had an early version as a furry monster, but that idea was quickly abandoned because it wasn't considered suitable for children to see. Additionally, Vanellope was initially going to be a redhead, not a brunette, and her head would have been larger in proportion to her body. Finally, the main characters from The Incredibles. Take a look. Mr. Incredible, Elastigirl, and Violet were the closest to their original designs, although the mother's face looks quite different from what we're used to. But take a look at Dash. He was originally designed with neater hair and a stronger body. Jack also looked quite different from what we saw in the movie, with a less round face. You know what's always the same? It's a pleasure having you here with us. That's why we've picked 2 more videos for you to check out. We'll see you in the next one.